Um, we'll let the other people who join in a bit, and we'll have this one recorded. But I'll start giving a little bit the context for today. So one of the core values, even of Thrive Beyond, is to have a beginner mindset. And we think of that one, and we'll expand a bit on that, kind of in that Zen tradition where you come, no matter how expert you are at something, with freshness, with a sense of wonder, and with full presence. We also are going to talk today briefly about the research that came from Carol Dweck at Stanford on growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Because one of the things that we'll discuss in a bit is how sometimes something that you even carry from previous successes keeps you from growing into the future. And without that, it's very difficult to do the beyond part of thriving, because at some point you need to go from being very competent at something to trying something that you, by definition, don't yet know how to do. And only in that discomfort do you get the rest of the growth. And many of our systems often don't reward that. And then I'll pass it to Julia, who's going to share a little bit of her own experience of the mindset that she developed from being a professional fencer, and how that, she'll explain, has been a part of her core principles in thriving. And then Yati will also share a little bit how he has seen both the use of mindset and sometimes even the challenges of maybe losing perspective at times. So, and we may do a little exercise. But before we start, I wanted to invite both Picara and Fernanda, who are right now connected. If you want to share a little bit of what mindset means for you and how it's played a role in the way you define it.
Sure. Well, for me, mindset is basically what, embraces all of your thoughts about, for example, the way that you think, right? And not only like the way that you think, but what is that you're doing with those thoughts, and if they are part of an action in your life. So it's basically like, how is that is our mindset, right? Like, where our goals going towards, and where the thoughts or the things that we're doing, right? Also with action towards those things that we want to achieve.
Good.
So basically,
Yeah,
that would be
completely. So we'll explain some kinds of mindsets, but you're right. It's pretty much almost like a whole organization of how you face life. Picara, do you want to share a little bit how you would use that in your life and work?
Yeah. Mindset is sort of the container and the filter through which you interpret the experiences you have in your life. So it's the way that you choose to process the information mentally. And so in the Sufi tradition, they talk a lot about being mindful is watching how an experience happens and how you interpret it. You might create a story about it. You might create a response. And so the mindset is, what do you do when you take that information and that data, that sensory information, into your system? And what programming might you have there? And does that programming move you more toward loving truth? Or does it move you farther away from loving truth? Does it move you more toward your own authenticity or farther away? So the mindset has a lot to do with how we're choosing to be with this data that comes in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned something that Sufism and most mystical traditions have, and many meditation traditions have, that I think was also implicit in Fernanda's, which is the main core gift to cultivate is to be able to observe what thoughts you're having. Welcome, Manuel. We were just starting briefly, Manuel. sharing what each of us consider mindset and how that has played in your life. So if you want to share a little bit of like what do you consider mindset to be and how it plays in your life?
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm driving. How do I consider mindset to be? Or
Yeah.
what do I consider? Mindset. Oh, calling me right off the gate.
That's okay. You're ready. You've done
Mindset
500 cases.
Yeah. Mindset is the inherent state of being that you're not thinking about, but it's there, and it's what drives it. It's sort of the foundation of your personality in a point in time.
Yeah. So you did very well, because without even being already in the class on time, you completely were building on what Fernanda and Picara said. And I was just mentioning that because Picara has studied deeply Sufism, for example. She explains that in that tradition, like in many, let's say, mystical or meditation traditions, you develop a better awareness to be able to see the mental constructs that then often filter what you're doing. Because one of the things that you'll see now that I'll introduce a little bit the work from Stanford is that we often have mindsets that are not helping us connect to our growth, connect to our most loving self, because some of our mental constructs from the ego are meant to kind of keep stable rather than to be open to the, let's say, bigger wonder of life. So because it's uncomfortable. So that's a good setting. And Fernanda, she works a lot in mindfulness, and with Manuel, we've had a similar educational and business background where you often try to think, what does it take for leaders to be able to be successful? So Caroline Dweck at Stanford spent quite a bit of time studying first children. And she was interested in seeing that some kid, when she would come to the classes, sometimes math or other classes, and give like a 10-year-old, like the kind of assignment of a 15-year-old. What was very interesting that she started to observe is about half of the kids, when they saw a very difficult math problem, almost started crying because they felt like they were already very good in their class and they were like acing the problems. And the idea of a problem that they could not solve felt unfair, seemed to challenge how they had been taught you are very smart, because then are you still smart if you cannot solve problems? But it was very interesting that about half of the class came to her and said, this is so exciting. We love to try things that are like that we've never seen. We'd love to see a problem like so different from the one we see normally in our class. And then she started to do a lot of work, and she has a very good book about this, of what happens when those mindsets, for example, get either very fixed or open for growth. So one of the things that she noticed is that when you, for example, tell young kids that they're very smart, they're much less interested in learning things that they are bad at, because it goes against their identity of smart. So they only choose problems where they already know how to do well. Whereas the kids who just enjoy trying something new, at which they, of course, at the beginning are barely able to do, it's normally because people praise them because they're hardworking, because they're curious, because they're resilient. So she already started to see a little bit of insight that not only are we often bad at seeing our own mindsets, but we often praise exactly the opposite things. Like, so this is good advice, say, for parents. Now, let's go into further in life. One of the things that's challenging is that often when people succeed, like let's say, like, Manuel has gone through a little bit of a similar path like I did early in life, like these very smart consultants that get paid hundreds of dollars an hour to tell anyone how to improve their strategy and their company. You take them very far from their comfort zone, often things where they have to deal with very complicated feelings, let's say, or try to play an instrument in public that they don't know. And they really do not like engaging in that. Because it is a system that kind of supports insecure overachievers. The overachievers at things like, I'm sure Picara knows some of those people from undergrad who go to a great Ivy League school, then they go to Goldman Sachs, and then you wonder, why are they working to do one more deal over the weekend to not see their family? And it's because they need constant confirmation that at what they think they're great, they're still great. Because they cannot get pleasure from being vulnerable and incompetent at the beginning of new things, which is why some of these universities also don't build entrepreneurs early on. Most of the entrepreneurs from Penn and HBS spend 15 years in corporate, and then they start something once, like it's kind of safe. So how does this look for well-being? And one of the things that we really invite in Thrive Beyond is the beyond part. You can get pretty far in the basics of thriving by having like a routine in the gym, by being careful with your food, by maybe doing some kind of basic mindfulness meditation. But sadly, it's almost only when people have a very big life challenge, like cancer, or like a very difficult, I don't know, divorce, that then they say, you know what, I feel there is something about my being that I was not cultivating, at which I am in the present not good, but I want to grow. That's why a community of growth is very valuable. Now, one of the values of Thrive Beyond is another kind of mindset called beginner's mindset, which is a little similar to growth mindset, but it comes from the Zen Buddhist tradition of the Japanese tradition, where, in Japan, sometimes someone may have been doing the same building in the same method for 800 years. And there's actually a building that every year they take it down and rebuild it, and take it down and rebuild it. It's made of these very specific ways of wood. But one of the things that Zen has that's spiritually very powerful and very much for thriving is showing up to anything as a beginner. Even like Suzuki Roshi Zen often says this very succinct phrase: in the mind of the expert, there are very few possibilities. In the mind of the beginner, there's so much possibility for growth, for discovery. And there's the other thing that happens if you have a beginner mindset. Let's say, whatever, Yati has so much experience in doing breathwork, but if he comes to the breathwork as the expert, he comes with half his presence. He's not even sensing the present moment and then it's sad that often basic expertise makes some people think they already know it all. And then there's several layers of listening that happens when you don't have beginner mindset. The basic level of no beginner mindset of listening is the person is talking and you don't even care what they're saying because you're the expert and you're just waiting to respond. They're just blah, 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 and you're going to tell them what you know. You can imagine people that are like that learn nothing from interactions. There's a second level of listening that Otto Scharmer has always worked, and he calls it, okay, have an open mind. Like you think the other person could have some ideas and you let them come in. So this is a first opening. But then there's like a third level of listening, which already makes a closer to what the Sufis would invite, which is what he calls listening with an open heart. And in this way of listening, you're not just checking to see if someone has some idea that would work for you. You listen with empathy and love because you think that human, beyond even his ideas, has something. The opposite of that is cynicism. Many people protect themselves, like falsely protect themselves by cynicism. Be like, oh, all yoga teachers are like that. All like woo-woo people are like this. All acupuncturists. And so it's very hard to learn if you don't have an open heart. But the deepest layer of listening that kind of goes back to this beginner mindset is what Otto Scharmer, who works at MIT, but kind of brought these traditions of deep listening from Tibet into kind of the Western world, he calls listening from the field. So you're not just listening even to the ideas of the person or to the heart and presence that's coming through, but you're listening to like what is manifesting in the world now. And you'll see that very experienced people like the Dalai Lama, whatever, they don't show, even though they're so experts in meditation. Like when they sit not just even with empathy and not just with openness, but with, I think that the easiest way to describe it is with a sense of wonder. That there is something there beyond even the idea, beyond, let's say, the person's purposeful emotion. And this is something we really, now we'll explain a bit why we think this is important. Because if all you do is learn techniques, that's having an open mind, at least you're learning techniques. If while you're being led in any of our practices, you also have an open heart, you will find also within yourself possibilities and patterns. But if you sit a little bit like the Sufis do, and you're open to realize that the mental constructs come in and out, so they don't have so much grab. The feelings are beautiful, but they also are kind of flowing. But that there is something. I mean, one of the values that we do have also in Thrive Beyond is to taste a kind of magic. You cannot taste the magic unless you set yourself to think that you're trying to learn even beyond new ideas. And when you do that, to some extent, you're also listening deeper within yourself. And often when people do this, then the things that we're sharing about well-being sit in a better place. Because you really think like, wow, something marvelous could happen this moment, in this chant, in this breath work, even if I've done it 2 years in a row all the same day. And sadly, a lot of modern society has made people's attention become very compartmentalized. Kind of like you do it going through the motions, like, and you do it maybe thinking of something else. So that's why today we wanted to bring this. Now we'll go into some more examples of this, but in my case, it really helped me, as Yati knows, when I started from scratch learning about breathwork and cold. I had the chance to have a very open mindset. I did not even fight or try to get warm. I just thought, like, each time I can find something. And then you see that you probably even get better outcomes for the biological elements. But you don't start by focusing only on the technique. So we'll go a little bit in a moment and open it up and share on this. But it's a good way of why we also have a community that's very diverse. Sometimes, sadly, when you have too many people that think like you, you get a little too comfortable because you think, okay, we know everything about whatever it is, yoga, sound healing, breathwork, like it. And even Yati has seen it. Like sometimes when you sit with 20 Wim Hof instructors, it can, rather than think, wow, this is where most of the imagination happens. Sometimes that's where you just like assume you know it too well. So I'll pass it briefly first to Julia, because one of the things that I like a lot that Julia does for us, in addition to helping us get the communication and all these things flowing very well, is like she very much lives the things we talk about in the Blue Zone. And I think she'll explain a bit how, in her case, a mindset she developed as a professional fencer, she could then transform that same thing, not for competition, but for embracing healthy habits. You want to share a bit, Julia?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Julia. I used to be a fencing athlete for over 10 years, and I remember some of our trainings, they would last over 3 hours. Usually we were training like 7 days a week, but 3 times a week it was at least 3 hours, and it was not just physical. It would, like, first hour was always just our trainer talking, and we would be like, oh my god, he went again into this like lecture, and it was like super annoying because it would be just about the mindset. And at that point I think I only understood what he was doing like maybe like 10 years ago, but it was just like explaining things that hit you only when you're an adult. So like Picara, I totally agree with you. Something what I realized, like the mindset, what I realized, it's a decision, like it's a decision that you make, how you want to be, what you believe in. It's like you decide maybe to have like a certain attitude to something. And I find the mindset is very, very intimate moment because only you know what you're actually doing. It doesn't matter what you say to others, but you know that you have the power to decide and you can do it. He used to always tell us, our trainer, that there is no such word I can't, because we were like teenagers. So like, I can't, like, I'm tired, like I can't do more push-ups, and we just like scream and we smash and we just like say like just like I can't. He's like, there is no such word I can't. There is just one word, I don't want to. And that's like true. And at that point you're like, no, I actually can't. And he like pushes you, and you always can. We could always go more. And so what I realized, like, there were kind of 3 parts for me for mindset. The first one is work ethics, because yeah, like when I talk about mindset, I always think about me showing up for me. But even Pablo, when you were talking today, right away you gave example about ice bath. For me, you going to university and completing master's degree, or like all these degrees, like when I did my master's degree, I still worked full time. It's mindset. I knew it's going to be hard. I'm like, I know it's going to be 3 years and then I'm done. And I was working full time and I did my master's degree, and I'm like, I know, but it's just you do this and you're done. So it's like work ethics. It's something that you do also all the time, because when competitions come, it doesn't matter what kind of mindset. I'm like, okay, now I really want to get it. But it's the mindset is the work ethics, things that I did, that intimate process that I was having that entire year that I was preparing for these serious competitions. That's actually what is happening in the competition. You're showing what you have done, because when you're training, you can be running and thinking about something. And you're like, always like, our trainer was running, is it the best you can? Is this how you're showing up? Because competitions are in a week, in a month, and like are you like, can you do better? And yeah, it was always like, if we were late, it was always like, and we were teenagers, like people started to go out and like smoking, and he's like, you can do whatever you want, because it's you show up. Like, I don't want to control you, but I see the results. So it's like, yeah, that was one thing. And then the other thing for mindset, it's like, it's mental toughness. It's like this ability to maintain this focus and determination under pressure. And we would have a lot of exercises that were mentally like, wow, he would really like push you. Like, we would have to do some exercise, or your fans and like your friends, like whom you're in the group with, they would say things that are not nice. You're weak, you can't do it, you have to stop, you're doing it wrong, and you have to go, and you can't listen. Because when you're in high level competitions, there is a lot of game happening in the background. There are people who are from like other countries, and they would pass by you and say something like, and it's affecting you. Everything is affecting you mentally. So it's like, how do you stay in this tough mindset? And yeah, and you just do what you need to do. Like, that's your goal, and that's where I'm going. And it's like very challenging. But yeah, like I remember when I lived in London, and I'm like, I lost my job. I was like getting a mortgage. I lost my mortgage. Like I had a breakup. the worst part of my life. I was crying like every day. I was like, I thought I'm gonna have gray hair. But I was going to the gym every single day because I'm like, yeah, no matter how bad I feel, no matter what I do, I have to, my mindset is like, I'm still at some point need to get better. So that's the only thing that I will not stop. No matter how bad I feel, I can cry, I can stay in bed all day, but at 7, I go to the gym, no matter what. So the second thing is mental toughness. And the other thing, I think we talked about it with Yati previously, but it was about creating new reasons to show up. Because yeah, if we have competitions for fencing, for me also growing up in a post-Soviet Union country, like going for competitions, it's like, wow, free traveling. I meet new people. It's like mind blowing. Oh my gosh. So it's like the goal, going abroad and achieving something. So if I go for one kind of competition, there is already another goal. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can't wait to go St. Petersburg, Poland, like Austria. There was always something to look forward to. So it's very important for so that mindset cannot work if the goal is achieved. You always need to review your goals and like set something that is more interesting, something that will like keep you having the same space. So I feel like, yeah, I always recalibrate and having like a bigger purpose for my goals, like bigger purpose, because like right now I'm like, why am I working out? Why am I eating healthy? Why am I doing all this effort? Like, is it like to look good or is it to feel good? Because to look good, I already look good enough. That's okay. But to feel good is something that is like never ending. This is something that's challenging for the rest of my life. I can always do something to feel good. Yeah. So these are the things that I really took a lot from
Great.
sports. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yati, do you want to share a bit?
Yes, thank you, Julia. Beautiful. It's also brought something for me. So I like to explore in the ocean while surfing. Surfing about 30 years. And this is my laboratory mostly that I examine how my body responds, mindset, and where I am in the specific moments. Because when the wave comes and I need to paddle to position myself, there are many criteria. And first I want to share about mindset, something miraculous that happened to me. And then I want to share something that I sabotage myself, which is not so miraculous, but it's exists. So first, let's start with the miraculous. I was surfing like a week ago, and usually I surf 2 hours, and I feel good, and I just go out. 1.5 hours, sometimes 1 hour, but average 2 hours. I was in session, and then suddenly there was a thought that I managed to observe. So mindset for me is the ability to observe the sky. And there was a thought coming and say, Yati, it's enough. You surf enough today and go out. Now, why we usually in surfing, we go out when we're tired? Because we increase our risks for accidents. That's why it's for safety, usually, when you reach that point. But I managed to see these thoughts and I observe it. And if I identify with that thought, the body starts to feel tired and I want to go out. But this time I just observe it and I continue paddling and surfing and enjoying and surf for another 1 hour or 1.5 hours at ease. So it didn't affect my body. So I didn't have the drop. So this is miraculous. That means that all the rest of the times when this thought comes, I sabotage my body, my tired, I go to. So this is the first thing. It's a true miracle that we're able to observe because the thoughts affect the cellular level of the body. many times the thoughts are subconscious. That's why we don't know why we feel that way. The second thing is I saw that I respond in life the best way when I'm kind of in emergency, basically when things are not working good and I need to kind of going into this survival mode, and then I start to think more creative and to create things. Now, it's a self-sabotaging because I will bring this situation again and again into my life so I can be creative. So this type of mindset that I need to be in a space of survival in order to be creative is something that I'm really let go in order to thrive beyond, because it served me till this point. But I'm to grow. So yeah, this is my sharing. I think this is the work, like in this community, to be able to expose and to. Thank you.
Great. I'll mention two things, and then we may propose a little exercise, whether we do it online or on your own. With Julia, and I think even with Yati, sometimes we've just tried something simple like do a plank until you think you have nothing left, and then you do 2 more minutes, then you find you can. But I like the structure a little bit that both Julia and Yati mentioned, which is one, I heard from Julia that these professional sports, of course, train you to always be checking if you're like fully present, partly because you have goals. And Yati mentioned how sometimes he brings his most engaged in tough times. And I would say one of the things we want to do in Thrive Beyond is not need tough times to want to like get healthier. We don't want a single goal to be the like I don't know, show up better in the uni and stuff. So one of the things that I would love to open up a bit to and maybe hear from Picara, since Sufism has a very big goal. Like Julia said, like, you know, like if it's just to look better, like the amount of motivation is maybe this size. If it's to feel like a much kind of more alive human being, it's a different motivation. But I would say implicit in what I heard from Julia, there's another next step. If you want to be at your best, to be part of a purpose that really calls you much bigger, like let's say to make this that we're doing like something that can globally impact people's health, then you no longer fight like, okay, looking good has some motivation, but like maybe a nice meal is similar. Like feeling good is a pretty good motivation, but still if I'm just a single individual feeling good, it's just okay motivation. Like some other things are gonna overcome it. Like at some point I'll be tired or depressed, or if the motivation really, and I think for many people, like say being a parent, it's a pretty big motivation. Like they would like to show up well for their kids. But I think there is this bigger motivation that we all can tune in some way, which is that what we're working on, and I feel that about Thrive Beyond in this case, like requires the best expression of myself that I can bring. Like it would be very, and I'm sure Picara feels that for her clients. Like it's not just it'd be nice to feel nice, it'd be nice to like you know, do breath work and eyes and sleep well. But it's like in my case, I feel many of us that are here together, I know this is very much true for Fernanda, the way she works with her son and in mindfulness, which is like it's hard to give our true gift if we're just kind of staying in the basic motivation of purpose and plan.
Pablo, I just want to
Yeah.
say that's the work ethics that I was talking about. That's
No,
work
I'm
ethic.
agreeing.
That's like how you actually show up, like what you actually doing, your best.
Exactly. So that's why I heard it from you. But one of the
Mm.
things I heard you say was like, sometimes because you don't necessarily have now a competition to be prepared for, you want to make your life and professional goals be
Mm.
exciting enough,
Mhm, mhm.
purposeful enough, and demanding more than you're pretty good. demanding magic, let's say.
Yeah.
So so I just wanted to pass it back briefly to Picara because I know that she has like in that tradition, and I know when I've done breath work with Yati, like it doesn't matter, he's done 100 of time, each time it's like a new one. But how we can also help upgrade our bigger purpose, partly because we feel accompanied, you know, in a world that right now feels I mean, sadly, the healthcare system in the US, as we said, is mostly a disease care system. So like sadly, there's a big part of the population that even their own health is not an obvious goal. But then let's say that you are healthy, and then you ask, what am I doing this for? And right now, I think there is a lot of distraction. Like people are seeing the news and the war and stuff. So it feels like, and I feel, I'll put it in my case and I'll pass it to Picara, just that like that almost all traditions helped us say like, you know, we are alive here for a reason, and we may be beacons of possibility into being like, let's say, good ancestors to the future that we were kind of in the process of living. And I do feel that if we get to be better ancestors to show there can be a world where people can be healthy, connected with nature, not only not destroying nature, but regenerating nature, we would also feel we're not doing this alone, which is part of the nice thing of being in an extended diverse group. Like we don't need to have our own NGO or just having one cause or saving one place. And you know, there's Pachamama. I know Manuel will probably move to the beach soon, and I know Picara tries to bring an oasis of peace in a city that often has a lot of noise. So this is what I want to bring into mind. My invitation, and for everyone when they listen to this in the context of the videos, how to tune a mindset that helps you thrive beyond into a purpose that feels worthy of giving it your best. So you don't need emergencies to show up your best. So you don't need like a business or a competition. And I wanted to pass that to Picara, maybe to share on how you work that in, because I know that you do have a practice that kind of keeps you very tuned to the most loving presence you can bring in, even though you often do very specific things of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. But how do you stay with this higher purpose mindset?
Yeah, thank you, Pablo, and everyone sharing is beautiful and been so insightful. Thank you. Yeah, my work inherently with people, you know, is about understanding who you are, understanding what you feel that your heart desires in terms of being here, and the fullest expression of who you are. And life is constantly bringing us experiences that help us to understand who we are better. And from the Sufi perspective, there's an idea that we have these veils that keep us from seeing the fullness of reality. And as we make it our focus to be more present with ourselves, more present with community, you could say more spiritually attuned, because spirituality to me means connectedness, right? Awareness of self and your community and the space that you're in and the way that you show up there. As you go deeper into understanding that and connecting to it, those veils start to lift. And there doesn't have to be a goal, there doesn't have to be a specific thing that you need to achieve. You become what you are. And so there's a sense of doing the practices or the work because I feel more like myself. I feel more centered. I feel more grounded. I feel more connected to others. I feel that my purpose flows out of me more easily. I can hear my inner intuition better, right? So it's my work comes from a place of the motivation is that I get to become who I am. I get to evolve and grow into my fullest expression. And while we don't necessarily need to be pursuing difficulty to make that happen, life inherently brings us difficulty. And so to speak to what Yulia said, you know, it is a choice and it is a practice, our mindset. And some of that choice could purely just be, I don't want to be thrown around by the world. I live in New York City. It's a very tumultuous place. How do I stay centered so that I can show up as the best version of myself and not get caught up in the anger or the ego or right or money or whatever the other things that are going on here? And so, you know, I'll give you a little example. You know, I've been doing practices for 20 some years now on these mindfulness, presence, heartfulness. And one of my teachers once said, there's nothing worth losing your heart center over. And
Beautiful.
last week, you know, my house in Florida was hit by Helene, the hurricane. And I remember the night before just sitting in my center and acknowledging that, you know, whatever happens, I will be okay. And that there's really nothing to get, you know, upset about on some level, right? Because on a deep level, I'm okay. And I'm still human. So I still had moments where I was worried about what was going to happen. But every time those thoughts came into my mind, I went deep inside and I felt my inner core and I felt my trusting of the universe and my trusting that no matter what happens, I know I will be okay. And that got me through in a way that when my housekeeper down there called, she said, "You're the only calm person I've spoken to today." And that calmness shifted her energy. When we finished the call, she said, "I feel so much better." Now she had to go deal with the next person and she was showing up with a calmness. So it's contagious. It makes the world a better place. And she was so grateful. She told me, "I'm so grateful that you're calm. It's making me feel better." So it has an impact. It has an impact on everyone that we meet when we can live from our best selves. And for me, that's a big part of, if there's a motivation, there's a joy in that. There's a joy in that comes from a very authentic place that does not require any striving or any pushing, right? It's just when I get to be in that state, I get to make my life easier, others' lives better. So, you know, now I'm facing the next hurricane, which is headed toward my house in Florida. And I'm able to actually laugh and say, you know, I trust the strength of that mindset, that every time a doubt, a fear comes in, I don't lie, I'm honest about it, but then I tell myself, where do I want to be? I want to be in my heart. I want to be centered. I want to trust. And making that choice over and over again is part of how we get stronger in this. And then it becomes a natural response, right? It's just how we show up in the world.
Yeah, that's really very beautiful. I had a very difficult episode of health like 2 weeks ago in Osaka. Like at the same time, I got a terrible diarrhea. Like I was kind of completely dehydrated for like 3 days of no sleep and like an incredible pain of gout that I did not even know was possible. And Yati remarked, he said, "Pablo, you're like, if there will be an army, you'd be like one of those army people who like, while that's happening, like I was the same. Because it's very hard to remain equanimous when you have no sleep and constant pain and total dehydration." But what I felt is exactly what you're saying. I'm glad that for 20 years I've been doing, in my case, a kind of qigong and advaita of just tuning to the bliss, the joy, and the peace that's always already in being, like not caused by anything like that.
Mhm.
And I'm glad because exactly it's too late to start it when you have an emergency and you're overwhelmed. Like I like Julia had, like it's good that you have it before. So I really hope the best for where you are. But I want to draw two things from what you're saying and then open up the group, which is it is contagious. So we do it, of course, kind of for ourselves, but it's almost like Thich Nhat Hanh, who I got to spend a lot of time with, a lot of his monks would just walk. We were at Pachamama not too long ago with 12 of those monks, just walking, like loving each step. And some people would tell Thich Nhat Hanh in the war with Vietnam, they said, you need to be realistic. You cannot not take sides. Like, this is like people being burned with napalm. Like, it's a war. You cannot just be peace and love. And Thich Nhat Hanh used to say that when some of the worst times where people were just living on boats, like moms and little kids, most of them would drown. Some of those boats would have 20, 25 people. If there was 1 or 2 people there, not half the boat, 1 or 2 who was able to tune into peace, eventually the whole boat managed to settle peacefully. And I think that's one of the beautiful reasons to invoke it and to have a place where we can remind each other. But the thing I would like to invite everyone who's listening to this now or in the next few days, I may not be able to repeat the phrasing perfectly, Picara, but you said something like this, that to allow our true purpose to blossom more beautifully. And I think back to the idea of having goals. Those goals need us at our most beautiful flourishing. And that is almost impossible if we don't make that practice the first step. And that's one thing I really want to highlight in the context of Thrive Beyond, that you should not expect to connect to peace and purpose once you've everything you got it perfect. When like you got all the exercises and you got all the money and you got all the purpose. No, in fact, the first step is with love, with purpose, and with peace. And then you do the practice. And this is something that sadly in Western culture, partly maybe because capitalism works this way, things are offered so that it's like, okay, once you get this new thing, then you'll find peace. And of course, that's never the case. And then like even yoga is offered like that to people now, like, oh, you do this. And then I really want to kind of tune in that we want that quality of presence to be the beginning. So then we can walk together like that, like with all, and then with the whole human intelligent emotions, and make sure that we're not selling one more thing, that it's just a kind of based on a lack mentality. Be like, oh, you're lacking this. Once you do the yoga, then you have peace. No, like let's say that the presence of your joyful being under any situation like a hurricane is the first step, so that you can then address whatever happens, so that peace can be contagious, so that your purpose shows up. I wanted to open briefly if Fernanda or Manuel want to share anything that's been coming up for them. Everything here is optional. So just in case something is coming up that you would like to bring into the conversation.
Oh, good. For me, I think I've been learning a lot from this session. Thank you.
Beautiful. Manuel?
I don't know if I'll be able to talk because I'm driving Interamericana and it's been breaking a bit, but so there's 2 things that have come up with what you said. One is the sense of wonder that I used to have as a younger person, the sense of being able to change the world that gave me that, that mindset of that broader purpose that is no longer there. I'm sure it's still there. It's just hidden in a way to where I'm not as in touch with it anymore. So that's one area of thought that I'm having as I hear you guys talk. And the other one is, and maybe related to it, is how do I live in a capitalist world, in a capitalist life day to day, where competition is intense, and I think of going to war every day. And more broadly, how am I a warrior towards the things that I care about, this difficult world, while being able to be in such peace internally with so much bliss? And that's the question that I have. I don't have an answer, but that's the exploration I'd like to do as you guys.
And I'd love to walk with you in that exploration a bit. I'll let Picara have some ideas first, because I know she deals with a lot of people who, just by living in Manhattan, are probably feeling like they are going into that. So let her maybe share her perspective, and I'll share a little bit of mine that I can empathize with the world you're working in.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that challenge because a lot of my patients are highly educated, professionals who have very intense jobs where there's competition or demands for very long hours. And so I've worked with people on teaching them different practices that they can do while they're doing other things. So how can you be more present in your body and more centered while you're on your computer, or while you're sitting at your desk, while you're doing even chores and things at home. So you know the 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 work situation may still require you to have that kind of motivation or drive, and we're not saying that has to go away, but how do you turn off the stress and reset and center yourself in the moments when you don't have to be there? Because that's really often where people get stuck, is that they are in that go, go, go mode, go, 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 get it done, make it happen. And then when they have the time to stop, they don't know how to calm their bodies back down and find their inner peace. We're not designed as humans to necessarily always be centered or without stress, right? And we've spoken a lot about hormetic stress here in the past. So it's, how do I deal with adrenaline rushes and all this energy moving forward and maybe being very aggressive, and then how do I come back to center? Because it's really what it's about over and over again, is coming back to center. And the more practice you get at that, the faster you can do that. And next thing you know, you're able to do it in between all sorts of conversations or meetings. Like, you're able to come back to center and reset before you enter into the next thing that you have to do. But it's practice and tools, some of which we're learning here. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll add to that, because I mean, Manuel and I have had similar kind of um, work and education things, like we worked at Boston Consulting Group a few years apart and went to Harvard Business School a few years apart, and kind of know a little bit the investment world. So the thing I did is exactly like what Picara is recommending. Manuel is lucky that he may be soon living close to nature. So that is a great ally if you can have it. But I think the best ally is your breath and presence. So what I started doing exactly, Picara, is like, and I think I showed Manuel a very brief example, and this is from like just one simple form of Qigong, where I would do 3 core breaths of opening the heart with a smile and a sigh. And the first thing I did is make sure that between everything I did, I had a pause of presence. So like before doing another call, going to another meeting, like checking the thing, because what I first saw that was making my mindset more noisy was when one thing got changed into the other. Like I was thinking in this meeting, running to the other. My first time in New York, I was always running late to things, like always triple booking, and then it was ridiculous. But I was very young, so like I was kind of understanding. And then, so the first one is this, to like, I think the best way to think about it is almost like in the hormetic stress of like an athlete. That when you get better cardiovascularly, one of the things that you measure is how quickly you go from taking your heart rate up to it coming down. That's a very obvious measure of cardiovascular health. Someone who's very unhealthy, like they go up the stairs and then for like 5 minutes, they're still like an athlete, like the heart still goes up, but then boom, back to base camp, because they've exercised very well their cardiovascular system. So I think exercising your presence muscle, so to speak, like Picara does, and I've done, it's to very quickly, all throughout the day, find many instances to tune to presence. And sometimes then you can get even in a meeting, but I think the part I really found helpful was to do it almost like if my day was a movie. And so like to not put one scene on top of the other, one meeting on top of the other, but just between all of them, like just a few breaths of presence. And that helped me show up to the next meeting, not already with the momentum of noise of the previous things, but feeling, okay, let me be, in my case, in my language, I don't know how Picara uses in Sufi, but standing kind of like as the witness, as awareness. So then I would take the character Pablo Jenkins less seriously. Because The thing that to me was tricky is because my mind already works very fast, and I would be in ideas, like meetings about ideas. I would get kind of like in this, but then the pause, and I think, Manuel, this can for you be very helpful, which is then also to bring a quality of relating even to challenging meetings. Like I know that when you were working at BCG, people said that you were very good about staying calm and not having too much stress. Doing that while actually doing the work, it's like what Picara was saying, it's like a gift. So you can both invoke it and make it part of your identity. So you don't feel like you're like mixed identity. You're like the person who shows with equanimity. Like you still get the work done. You still like need to kind of make the deals happen. But then people can relate to you as a not being in a hurry, so to speak. Like the energy often of being in a hurry is a mindset that cannot taste the abundance and the bliss already. When you're able to already taste it, you don't feel like the compulsion that like everything needs to be fixed right away. And I think this is over the next couple of weeks, we'll share a couple of things that may go in that direction. So we're coming close to the hour, but Julia, you want to share a little bit?
Oh yeah, Manuel, I just wanted to share something also because I also lived in New York and London and like super stressful times and studying and working, and especially I worked in online gambling, fast-paced, crazy competitive environment. And I remember like just like actual practical tools. Like when I have lunch, because it's all the day screen time. So when I have lunch, I would go to the park alone. I would not go with my colleagues because it's like useless chat. It's like spending more energy. And it's like same people that I work with. I go alone, either like with my headphones, like I grab my lunch and I just like in the summer, like lay down on the earth and just like actually feeling the earth, like grounding. It's like big thing, like really that hour just by yourself. And then I know you have kids and it's a little different, but for me, it's also like after work, always going for a run, like doing something like really like physical activity, just a little bit, but also doing something a little bit like something that I would never do. I don't know. I'm not a big swimmer. I would go for a swim, or I would go for some kind of strange dancing class or some art exhibition to another part of town to do something very different alone, something that is like almost creating new neural pathways. How do I get to that part of London? What do I do? So it's like really distracting me from everything else what I was doing before. And I'm learning and looking something new, trying new food. And yeah, so that helps. Helped me.
I think Picara just said two things. I think this is very good. Feeling your feet on the ground, placing the awareness there. And then slow, control. You don't even have to control, just slow breaths. And then I completely agree that that if you have the chance, like Julia, to be in a place where you can do something new, it shifts the momentum of the mind. But I think that the other thing that I really like, and I'll close on that one from Picara's thing, which is the person that's most helpful in a room, not just a business room, is the one who's most calm. And at the same time, kind of has a sense of wonder. Because they see things the other don't see. And they kind of command the space. So we'll leave you with this exercise that Yati proposed, which could be good, which is if you want tomorrow in the morning, like do some push-ups and then count how many you did, like you think you're your maximum, and then take a pause and try to find a mindset that you say, I will assume no limit. I'll just keep going beyond what I think I'm done, and see what you discover. And we'll be, this week, we're gonna be also inviting people to share if there's any book that has accompanied them well. Because even though we don't wanna overburden people with content, I think one of the things that's nice of a diverse group is sometimes finding interesting things that of the many things people have read are like I would call it like the pearls of wisdom. So you can start thinking on each of you what of that would be, and Julia will announce it soon. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you,
We'll
everyone.
be praying and sending good vibrations, Picara. I know this seems to be like the strongest hurricane ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just hope that the science allows at least people to be safe by letting people know in time.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. My community down there is very beautiful, and I think they've all evacuated, but that's the most important thing, right? So just pray for safety, and yeah, that hopefully the damage is not too bad. So thank you all for that.
Thank you for being present. All right. Thank you, Yati, Julia, Fernanda, Manuel.
Thank
See
you.
you in the group. Ciao.